Hello everybody, this is That Shy Guy Matt, and today I thought I'd start a new series of videos where I just kind of look around the world to see about differences, whether it's cultures, foods. I know a fair amount of things about, I'm a jack of all trades. I know a little bit about everything, but I don't know a lot about one thing. Since I'm married to a Filipino, I thought I'd start with a Philippines video on the 10 cultural differences between America and the Philippines. So I thought that'd be a good starting point. And then I'll move on to different countries. This is by a man called the Savvy Expat. Go check him out. And with that said, if you like what you see here, like, comment, subscribe, and let's just hop into this video.
What's up, Savvy Expats? So today we're talking about 10 cultural differences between America and the Philippines. And this goes without saying, but this is a generalized list. So not all Filipinos and not all Americans do the things that we're about to talk about. And I'm speaking from personal experience, being that I was raised in the US, but am currently living in the Philippines. Alright, enough talk, let's get into our list. So at number 1 on our list of cultural differences, we have quirks and expressions. Yes, the way that Filipinos express themselves versus Americans can differ in several ways. As many of you may already know, Filipinos tend to point with their lips like that, while Americans...
Yep, this is true. So again, I'm married to a Filipino, and I've been to the Philippines twice. Once for almost a month, the second time for about a week, when I was waiting for my wife's papers to be approved. And yeah, when I first went there, when she wanted me to grab something for her, she goes, "Gah, can you grab my phone?" And I'd be like, what does that mean? Is that some kind of weird kiss thing? I don't know what that means. And then she pointed out to me that it means pointing. Instead of pointing like this, they go pointing to something with their lips. I've learned to do it too. Well, mainly just with her because she gets it. But yeah, that was something I learned quick.
Americans tend to point with their fingers. Oh hey, where's the CR? So that's a terrible
CR, comfort room. In America, we call it the bathroom. That one threw me off at first too, because I didn't know why it's just shortened down to CR, but comfort room, I'm like, is there really anything comfortable about the bathroom? But yeah, that's the word difference.
example, but you get the idea. Or another one I learned here in the Philippines is that this hand wave means like wala, there's no more, or wala, something's closed.
Not heard that one.
Asking a Filipino if there's any more food, for example, and they do this, that means that there's no more. And actually, not too long ago, there was this little boy named Gab and his mom that lived with us. They were from the Visayas region of the Philippines, and they would actually, this is what they actually taught me, is this. So usually when a Filipino raises his eyebrows, that means yes. Hey Gab, you want?
Okay. Yeah, my wife will do that sometimes. I'll ask her something and she'll go, maybe she'll be on her phone and she'll be like, I'm like, okay, that means yes. To be fair, I have seen Americans do that. Though usually we tend to do like the nods or the yes or thumbs up kind of thing. But I have seen Americans do that. But Filipinos mostly do that. A lot.
Want some spam? Yes, Well, in America, there's 3 ways that you can say yes non-verbally. Number 1, you just nod. Number 2, just give a thumbs up. And 3, just do this, which means
yeah,
okay.
I forgot about that
and
one.
This is not really an expression, but say you're here in the Philippines and you're out on the street and it's hot outside. If you're waiting at a stopwalk to cross the street, it's pretty common to see Filipinos hiding behind like a sign or a pole to get away from the sun. So when it comes to avoiding the sun here in the Philippines, it can be pretty extreme. So in the US, umbrellas are only used for the rain, while here in the Philippines, it's used for both the rain and getting shade from the sun. And this is because being dark-skinned here in the Philippines is seen as like lower class or even like frowned upon here. And it's
okay. So this is an interesting topic. In America, when we say racism, you instantly know what I mean by racism. It's hating of another race. It's using offensive slang words like the N-word towards somebody dark. Now in the Philippines, just like a lot of Asian countries, like Korea, they see white skin as perfection. The most beautiful thing ever. That's why there's a lot of skin whitening products in Asian countries. And to be fair, I understand it's a cultural thing. The Eastern is more white-skinned. The Western world... Well, the Western world, America's a mixed pot. But you see what I'm trying to say. Asian people are always trying to be like Americans, and Americans always try to be like Asian people. You know, it's because to you, it's a foreign thing. It's exotic. It's like, ooh, Asian people, Japan's cool. In Japan, they're like, ooh, American stuff, America's cool. That's exotic. So yeah, the dark skin thing, whether you're Indian or if you're a black American and you're in the Philippines, I don't want to say they're going to be racist to you because they'll probably mention it at some point, but Filipinos are not confrontational. They're not going to say anything mean to you, really. Even if they literally hate you, they're going to be super polite. But you are going to get some looks and you're going to see some talking amongst each other if you're dark skinned. And it's well, don't get me wrong, it's definitely racist. But in their culture, it's not necessarily, it's complicated. I'll just leave it at that. I've never really heard a Filipino say anything. When I was in the Philippines, I was taught that if you have dark skin, you're considered uneducated and ugly, yada, yada, yada. A lot of negative stereotypes. So just be prepared if you're dark skinned when you go there for a lot of looks. Well, even being white American, I got a lot of looks. Everywhere you walk, people look at you. So it's definitely an issue, but this isn't just a Philippines thing. Again, a lot of Asian countries have this issue. Like,
it's funny because while Filipinos are hiding from the sun to be as white as possible, Americans are out in the sun, in the open, to be tan. So being tan in the US is considered attractive, while in the Philippines it's the opposite.
Yep.
Now for cultural difference number 2, we have use of words or slang.
Okay.
For example, here in the Philippines we say soft drinks, while in the US we
Soda
say
pop.
soda,
Yep.
or like what we like to call in the Midwest, pop. Or of course, Filipinos say aircon, while in the US we say AC or air conditioning. Or in the Philippines they say tissue, while in the US we say napkins. Or there was also this one time, I go to church here in BGC, it's called Every Nation, and one of my friends asked me, Evan, do you want some alcohol? And here am I thinking, alcohol? This is a Christian church, we're all teenagers here, why is he offering me some booze? And then he pulls out of his pocket some hand sanitizer. I'm like,
I think I've heard that expression.
That kind of alcohol. So that was actually the first time I heard hand sanitizer used as alcohol. Or another one is Filipinos say ref, while Americans say fridge or refrigerator. Or Filipinos say slippers, while Americans say flip-flops. Filipinos say brownout, Americans say blackout.
Yeah.
Americans say sneakers, Filipinos say rubber shoes. Filipinos say CR or comfort room, Americans say restroom. Filipinos say open the light or close the light, Americans say turn on the light or turn off the light.
Okay, so yeah, restroom. I mean, rest, comfort, those kind of go hand in hand. I've always said bathroom. I'm not even sure why it's called a rest room, because you don't really go there to rest. I mean, if you're taking a whiz, it's definitely comforting, you feel better. But if you're doing the other thing, I don't know if that's necessarily comfortable or resty. And he just mentioned, turn off the light, close the light. Yeah. When we were in a hotel in the Philippines, you go to sleep and my wife would say, close the light. And I said, close the light? And she goes, close the light. I'm like, well, I can't close the light. There's no door to close on the light. I was being sarcastic. And, that's when I learned. I mean, I knew what she meant, of course, but I was just poking fun at it. But yeah, close the light instead of turn off the light. There's a few things. She's adjusted to being here. The things she says, there's a lot of cute little quirky things like that are said that are just interesting.
Filipinos say ball pen, Americans say McDonald's, Filipinos say McDo,
Americans say McDonald's, Filipinos say Jollibee. If you know, you know.
Americans say butter, Filipinos say margarine. I think Americans say cracker, Filipinos say biscuit or biscuit. Alright, moving on to cultural difference number 3. Philippine culture is polite and sensitive. So the best words that I can muster up to describe how Filipinos interact with each other is polite,
very
subtle, sensitive, and non-confrontational. Whereas in the US, people are more like assertive, direct, and confrontational. So in the Philippines, if someone spoke even the smallest hint of something negative about someone, that would speak volumes. While in the US, that would go unnoticed. And to take that even a step further, even insulting in the US can be a type of joking and bonding.
Yeah, I have an important announcement to make.
Joking around about people's new bad haircut or how bad they are at sports, that is pretty common in the US. And that's not to say that that is not the case with Filipinos. I mean, that's just pretty much a type.
Okay, so yeah, when I was in the Philippines, I have never met a more friendly, polite bunch of people. It doesn't matter who it was. It could be somebody homeless or somebody who's doing stuff in their arms, if you get my drift. They are still super friendly. Never a mean thing to say. It's amazing. They're very optimistic. When the typhoons hit and there's like tidal waves, or my mind went blank right now, where the wave comes in from the ocean and it's huge and just wipes out everything. When it wiped out that one city a few years ago, if it was an American city, we would be moping for weeks. We'd be sad. We wouldn't get much done, which rightfully so. But in the Philippines, they mourn the dead, of course. But even in the destroyed city, they are still smiling. They're positive. They're happy. They're working together. It's a totally different culture. He did say in America, we are right to the point and blunt. Filipinos can be blunt, but not in a purposeful way like we are in America. Like in America, we'll tell you how we feel bluntly, but in the Philippines, they'll say something and it'll come off as blunt and maybe rude, but it's not meant to be. For example, when I was there, my mom was there for the wedding. She went to get shoes for the wedding. She was having a problem with her shoes, and the lady at the store said, "Oh, you're so fat." Now in America, if a shoe salesperson said you were fat, man, you would be fired. People would be yelling at you. But in the Philippines, it was not meant to be offensive or rude. They were a different kind of bluntness to it. They just say it as it is. In their mind, it's still being very polite. They do not mean it to be hurtful. So we learned quickly not to take offense to everything they said, because when you'd hear it, some things they would say to you, you'd be kind of hurt by. And you just learn eventually that is just how they say things. Whereas if they were in America and they said those things, Americans definitely are not going to get, we have a very different culture. So, but yeah, so again, we could be blunt, they could be blunt, but not on purpose. They do not mean to come off as blunt. English is taught as a second language in the Philippines.
Type of joking all over the world, but I see that more common in the US than it is here in the Philippines. And like I said, with Americans, they're more direct, blunt, and tend to not sugarcoat. If there's something bothering them or the food is taking long to get served, it's not uncommon to hear a waiter get an earful. So Americans usually say what's on their mind. While on the other hand, Filipinos are less confrontational. And I think part of it is because a lot of Filipinos are really polite. Like even when there's someone walking near or past you on the street, I noticed that Filipinos are kind of like dip down, put their hand down like that. I don't know how to show you guys in the small camera. And they do that, and I think that's a sign of respect.
When I was walking in Manila, Philippines, it's not a very big country, it's just a lot of islands, but there are some crowded places like Manila where it's super packed. And when you walk in crowds there, you never really bump into people. Everyone just kind of squeezes together. Now where I live in the US, the crowds really aren't that bad here. I mean, if you're in like New York is probably the worst place to walk. I've been there once. I never want to go back to New York. And by New York, I mean Manhattan. The crowds there just bump into you. I hated it there. But yeah.
Or just like a type of courtesy. Or even when it comes to daily conversing, there's a lot of, can I have, please, sorry. And a lot of times, that's not the case in the US. For example, if I were to say at a restaurant here in the Philippines, let me get a cheeseburger, that would not really be a common way to phrase things here in the Philippines. That would definitely be uncommon here. In the States, that kind of phrasing is normal.
Yo, boss, let me get 2 chopped cheese with every.
Okay, yeah. When I was in the Philippines, we went to a McDonald's, and I said I wanted 3 Egg McMuffins. And the cashier said, "You want the number 3 McMuffin?" I said, No, I want 3 Egg McMuffins. She goes, "You want the number 3 combo meal, sir?" And my wife told me, you have to say pieces. I'm trying to just think of how to describe what pieces means. So basically I had to say, I'd like 3 pieces of Egg McMuffin, which means you want 3 individual Egg McMuffins. Pieces being the key word, so to speak. So yeah, there's definitely some word things you got to learn when you're at a restaurant. But thankfully, I was with my wife, so she could order things for me, and it'd be a lot easier. Because not just because they have English as a second language there doesn't mean everyone speaks it perfectly or necessarily understands you. But hey, it's still more languages than most Americans know.
Everything on it. Put bacon on it too. Salt, pepper, and vinegar.
So again, this is a generalization. There are direct Filipinos out there and non-direct Americans. And for the fourth cultural difference, that is the pace of life. Americans are very fast.
You know, I also want to add, I know he said Filipinos aren't like pushy or confrontational, and they're not, but there are some places where they can come off as more pushy. Like when we went to Boracay, which is like a tropical, worldwide famous island resort and has lots of, it's just beautiful there. There is a lot of people there, like every 5 feet, trying to sell you, whether it's a rack of sunglasses or flip-flops on a rack, or trying to sell you, come ride our jet skis, come do parasailing. And I get it, it's their livelihood. So of course they're trying to sell, you know, that's how they feed their families. But they are very, very persistent on bugging you to buy the stuff. And as an American, we see that as pushy, so we get kind of aggravated, and I was getting kind of aggravated. I didn't say anything mean, of course, but I was politely being like, no, thanks. And then I'd walk away, and the guy would be like, sir, I could offer you a special price of, and I'm like, no, that's okay. No, I'm good. So my wife taught me a phrase. I don't remember it in Tagalog. That's the language. At least depending on where you're from in the Philippines, the dialect varies. Whatever the phrase is, she taught me. I said it to them, and they would instantly smile and laugh, and they'd be like, oh, no problem, sir. So whatever it was I was saying, they knew it meant. But yeah, that's about as pushy as you're going to get in the Philippines. And it's an American, it's pushy, but yeah, again, it's them trying to make money. They're trying to feed their family just like everyone else is. But I never really got mad at them about it. Yeah, I definitely recommend going to Boracay if you're ever in the Philippines. Unlike a tropical resort in America that'll cost you thousands in just 1 week, you could go to Boracay for like 2 weeks and spend like $300. And that covers a 5-star resort. That covers food the resort prepares. That covers if you're going to go parasailing or other stuff. Yeah, you could do a lot with $500, $300 in 2 weeks. Yeah, $300 in 2 weeks is easy. You could do so much stuff compared to America. But anyways.
Fast paced and tend to have a busy agenda. As for the Philippines, people are more chill, laid back, and slower paced. And so one thing I noticed is that people's normal walking pace here in the Philippines is actually a lot slower than the walking pace in the US. I remember walking in New York, everyone has somewhere to go, they're walking fast, and they have to be at their appointment early or on the dot. While here in the Philippines, it's common to see people upwards of an hour late to an event. Even when it comes—
Yeah, first off, I will say, my wife still has a very hard time after 13, 14 years now adjusting to the fast-paced lifestyle in America. You could read about it all you want, you could watch videos on it, but once you're here in America, it's very hard to get used to come to this country where it's very fast-paced, coming from a country where it's very slow-paced, everything's very laid back. There's a reason a lot of Filipinos that come here, whether they're married to somebody or they're on a work visa, there's a reason a lot of them get worn out pretty quick. At least mentally, they get drained from how fast-paced it is. And then there's money issues in America. There's so many differences you got to get used to, especially if you're going to live here. It's just a very fast-paced lifestyle. It's the total opposite of the Philippines, which is probably why so many Filipinos go back home every year just to get a break. Mind you, going from Ohio to the Philippines is like 22 hours to 25 hours, depending on flights, because the longest flight is usually about 16, 17 hours all the way. Yeah, it's a long flight, and it's going to the Philippines from Ohio. It's like $3,000 a ticket for, both ways. So it is expensive. Okay, so when it comes to being late, oh boy. Basically, if you know anybody from the Philippines that lives in America and you have a party you want them to come to, The secret to getting them there on time is to tell them it starts an hour earlier. So if your party's at 5 p.m., you tell them your party's actually at 4 p.m. This way they'll be there by 5 p.m. That's how it works. Yeah, everything in the Philippines was leisurely, to say the least. Nothing was necessarily on time. But yeah, even when they come here, even my wife, she's never on time for anything. Never. I mean, even doctor appointments that are like scheduled events you have to be there on time, she struggles to get there on time. Whenever there's a party with the other Filipinos locally, nobody ever shows up on time. Sometimes I try to be there on time, but then you might wait like an hour for everybody else to show up. So, yes, it's a stereotype, but it's very, very true. No one's ever on time. Even if you ask like Google or Alexa, why are Filipinos always late? It'll tell you. That's how well known it is. So, if you're going to be marrying a Filipino or going to a Filipino party, just realize whatever time you're told is a lie. It's not going to start till later.
Bill or just transactions in general, people can be very slow. And it's even common to find employees in the grocery store just chatting in the middle of an aisle. While in the US, people are very weary about other people's time, so it's considered to be rude if you're late. So that's definitely one area where you see the island life in Filipinos. They're very chill and laid back. Moving on to cultural difference number.
This is also why if you're going to retire to the Philippines, you're definitely going to enjoy it. For starters, the American dollar is worth a lot more there, so you could live like a king. And secondly, now that you're retired, life there is so much easier and laid back. Assuming you don't have health problems. It's definitely cheaper than America, but if you have major health issues, you're probably going to have to stay in America, just being honest. Nothing against the Philippines. I love the Philippines, but I also want to point out, I meant to bring up earlier when he's bringing up the politeness of Filipinos. When you go there and you talk to a Filipino, you're always going to have them refer to you as sir or ma'am. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am. They are very polite with that. It's kind of like children in America, depending on how you're raised, often are raised with saying sir or ma'am to somebody out of respect. You'll hear that in the Philippines as an adult from other adults. So it's very endearing to hear that when somebody calls you sir. It's like, oh, wow, you're calling me sir. Thank you so much. And I always forget to call them sir or ma'am back because I'm American. I just don't think about it. But I do say sir or ma'am to elders in America, though. Older people I bump into, or if I go to help them and they're like, oh, thank you, sir. And I'll be, oh, no problem, ma'am. So, anyways.
Number 5, and that is sharing is very common in Philippine culture.
Yep.
Here in the Philippines, people are very generous and are willing to lend personal items. Whether it be clothes, an umbrella, a bike, Filipinos are generally willing to share. And also, it can be to the point where they feel obligated to lend their resources. And don't get me started when it comes to food. Filipinos are probably the...
Okay, when I was in the Philippines, my wife's aunt lives in America. We'd call it like a rural area. Middle of nowhere, like farming, so to speak, area. Had a home that was basically like, I don't want to say a shack, but compared to an American home, you could tell they weren't wealthy or anything. And she barely had anything. They were so polite. After I met them, we said goodbye. The aunt came out and she went inside and she came out with a handful of packets full of Skyflake crackers. For whatever reason, to me, that just made me emotional inside because her aunt and the family had next to nothing, living in a small place with not much, barely making it every day, so to speak. And yet they offered me, the American, all these crackers as a gift. Try not to get emotional about it, but yeah, it was really touching. The generosity. Unfortunately, us Americans, we could be helpful, but we have our limits, unfortunately. But if you go to the Philippines and go to like a very poor area, you're going to be humbled by how generous the poor are there. It's very interesting.
Most hospitable people when it comes to sharing food. Whether it be families or even strangers, Filipinos insist that you eat with them. And this is regardless of how much food they have or even their financial situation, they're always generous with their food. Even to the point where it's taken as an insult if you don't accept the offer to eat. I even remember there was this guy named Jeff here in BGC that would walk around and sell lumpia. And whenever I'd see him, he'd ask me if I ate, and if I hadn't, he'd offer me lumpia free of charge. And
See, exactly, with the ants offering you food, and it would be rude not to accept it. You know, being an American, again, with those crackers, I kind of wanted to give them back and be like, no, you need them more than I do. But she was very much insistent that I take them. So that is some generosity.
that's how generous Filipinos are. Now, as for Americans, it's not that they don't like sharing, it's just that an independent culture is more so promoted. It's a get your own food or do it yourself kind of mentality. Now, for cultural difference number 6, Americans are very adamant about personal space. In the US, physical boundaries are very strong, especially when it comes to strangers. So commonly, Americans have like a bubble, and the only time that bubble is broken is to shake hands. When conversing with strangers, there's space. When walking, there's space. Just wherever you go in general, people need their personal space. So that's why there's very seldom bumping or brushing up against someone else. Whereas here in the Philippines, there's all this room on the sidewalk, and yet still another person will walk literally right beside you. Or when getting off the escalator, someone will stand right in front of it while blocking everyone else. There was this one time where I was just standing on the sidewalk where there's practically nobody else nearby me. It's a big sidewalk, and this lady walks right beside me, pretty much almost bumps into me, and then tells me to social distance. So spatial boundaries in the Philippines is...
Okay, so that's an interesting one. I kind of mentioned earlier that when you're in the Philippines and you walk in crowds, they try to avoid you respectfully. You know, they try to, they like this. However, they do get close to you. The second time I was in the Philippines, I was getting onto they have like a metro system, kind of like the subway in New York. These trains that run on tracks around Manila. I was, everybody kept pushing inside to go inside, so I waited and let everybody in. And when I went to walk in, this guy just rudely cut in front of me and kind of bumped me. So I ended up falling between the platform, the train platform and the train itself, and I fell in between the crack and ended up fracturing my ankle on the wheel. And I needed help. Even though the guy was very rude and had no personal space problem bumping into me, everyone else rushed to me and helped me get out of the tracks before the train started moving. And somebody also flagged down the conductor to say, "Oh, hold on." So, again, it's a mix because personal space issue definitely comes across as rude to an American. However, if you do get injured, they're going to be there to help you. So it's a balancing act. But I only noticed that mainly in Manila. When you're in a more rural province, like my wife is from Oriental Mindoro, you don't really have that problem, though. When you're trying to get onto buses, vans full of people, they try to cram you in, even though in my case, you're a fat American. They shove like 10 people next to you on a van, even though you literally cannot fit. And my legs were squished like this, and I was in so much pain because it was like a 5-hour trip on a van to get on a ferry to go to the other island to get to her city. So the personal space thing is definitely an issue, and you're going to be cramped sometimes, but you keep your cool. Remember, to them it's normal. To us Americans, we don't like it. We like our space around us. So thankfully my wife was with me. That really helped.
really just different. Filipinos like to be close together while Americans need their personal space. Now, for cultural difference number 7, we have Filipinos have respect for their elders. In the Philippines, older brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents are addressed with respect.
Yes, I learned this right away. When my wife, for example, asks me, "Hey, can you prepare something for me?" I'll say, "Yes, Po," which means I'm respectfully saying yes, not just a normal yes. It's like an enhanced version of a yes. And that's why in the Philippines, you're also going to learn with elders. They will put their hand out, and you will put your head on their hand. It's hard to show. Maybe I'll put up a picture, or maybe he will. But it's a sign of respect for your elder. There's very much an elder respect thing there. And I really like that about the country. We don't have that as much in America anymore. Now we more or less insult the elderly people due to usually political issues, sadly. But yeah.
Even if it's with strangers, Filipinos will address others as ate or kuya as a sign of respect. Same goes with family. Tita, tito, lolo, lola. It's all respect. And not to mention, Filipinos do mano, which is like putting your grandparents' forehand on your head to show respect when you're greeting them.
Mano,
and so basically anyone that's older than you is treated with that kind of respect. Now in America we say Mr. and Mrs., but nowadays that's not always the case. Now as for cultural difference number 8, that is rules are often not followed here in the Philippines. I remember
Yes, that is all I'll say.
this one time here in the Philippines we saw a sign that went along the lines of no peeing here, and then you see all these little pee marks on the side of the wall. It's pretty funny. But even when it comes to enforcing laws, most people don't follow them anyway. For example, littering is common and road rules are often not followed. Or if the police pull someone over for disobeying traffic laws, at the same time you have hundreds of other cars doing the same. So they only get 1 out of hundreds of people doing the same exact thing. While in America, laws are strictly enforced.
Yep.
For example, there's a line, you're expected to get in line and wait your turn. While here in the Philippines, either there is no line or someone cuts in line and no one cares. But again, this isn't everyone in the Philippines.
That is true. Not everyone in the Philippines is like that. When I was there having to get my wife's papers together, and you're in government buildings, like for health stuff, there's a line of people, and some people would just walk in and just kind of cut in the line. Other people would lay their flip-flops on the ground, and you'd see like a row of flip-flops, and then those people would go sit against the wall. So it kind of like left their spot in line, and somebody else would come in line and put their flip-flops in front of somebody else's. It was so funny. The rules there just kind of exist. And when somebody did cut in line in front of us, I was kind of annoyed by it. But my wife was just like, she told the person, and the person just kind of ignored her and stayed in the line anyways. So again, not everyone does that, but there are definitely rules there that not everyone follows. We did see people peeing on the street all the time in Manila, and the traffic in the Philippines is crazy. It is just chaos. I mean, there are lanes, so to speak, more or less for cars, but instead of being like a 2-car lane, somehow they'll get like 4 cars squeezed in it, and it's not even 4 direct lines. It's like lines swerving all around. And there, in all seriousness, there's a lot of accidents in the Philippines, in places like Manila, of cars or jeepneys. A jeepney is sort of like a bus we would have here, so to speak. Look them up, they're cool looking. Of people getting hit by them because the traffic rules and the pedestrian rules, just nobody really follows them, so there's always problems happening. Especially with people on like motorcycles, getting into accidents, either going too fast or not paying attention. Yeah, it's a big problem there. Again, not everyone does it, but yeah, if you go to Manila, you're gonna notice there's a lack of enforcement with a lot of things. So
now for cultural difference number 9, we have Filipino meal structure. The time and the amount of meals that Filipinos tend to eat is different than the US. It's fairly common to see Filipinos eat 5 to even 6 meals a day because of what's called merienda, which is basically like a snack. So I believe the structure of meals go breakfast, merienda, lunch, merienda, dinner, late night merienda. And merienda can be anything from coffee and crackers to pandesal to puto and conchinta. But
even here in America, I don't know, I've never heard of that term, meriendo, but my wife is always snacking in between meals. It's just, I don't get it. Always snacking. Like half of her meals are just snacks. Yeah, it's definitely different than in America.
the way I see it, Filipinos may eat several times per day, but it's still probably equivalent to the amount the average American eats per day. Americans usually eat 3 square meals per day, but usually those 3 square meals are larger serving sizes. Yep. So by the end of the day, the 6 meals that a Filipino eats is probably equivalent to the 3 meals that an American eats. But of course, again, it varies from person to person. And for the last and final cultural difference, we have tipping. Tipping is a big part of American culture. In almost every situation where someone is of service, a waiter, hairdresser, cab driver, bartender, you name it, they get tipped. With Americans, there's no mandatory amount for tipping, but it's considered rude to not tip at all. Most Americans tip like 15 to 20% of their bill. What I found here in the Philippines is that tipping is still existent, but it's definitely less common. I remember telling my driver that in the US, it's normal to tip 10 or 500 pesos to a waiter, and he was absolutely shocked. He couldn't believe that that was the tip and that wasn't the price for the entire meal. But it makes sense because, I mean, the financial situation of both countries is different, so what do you expect? So there you have it, Savvy Expats, 10 cultural differences between America and the Philippines. And
Okay, so that was the 10 cultural differences between America and the Philippines. That was a great video. Well, a lot of it I knew, some of it I didn't know. Definitely, hopefully if you're watching this, you're either from the Philippines and you enjoyed this, or you're from maybe another country and you want to visit the Philippines one day. Now you know. Like I said, the Philippines is definitely the friendliest, politest place I've been to a certain extent. Like you said, the rule breaking is kind of unfriendly, especially when it happens to you, but overall, they're super friendly people, super polite people. They have a lot of respect for elders. They're very laid back. It's an absolutely great, beautiful country. Honestly, if it wasn't for my major health issues, I would probably live in the Philippines. But fortunately, I have a lot of health issues that they just don't have the proper care for there. So sadly, I'm relegated to just visiting once in a while. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Lets me know you want to see more of these kind of videos of me reacting to different countries. If you have any recommendations of videos I should watch when it comes to countries, or just maybe something you'd like to see me watch, let me know in the comments. I do read the comments. And with that said, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.